our next storyteller is Swati Kakotkar. A very warm welcome, Swati, and thank you so much, firstly, to being waiting so patiently for your turn. So let me introduce Swati. Swati is a founder of an initiative called Story Kibori, principal storyteller, learning strategist, nature educator, sustainability practitioner, and a picture book enthusiast. She's going to narrate in English and Konkani. The river she's going to talk about is what I'm going to say a riddle on it. I'm the longest tidal and winding lifeline of my state, starting in the Western Ghats and meeting the Arabian Sea near Vasco da Gama. Who am I? Please keep guessing while Swati takes you through her story on this river. Over to you, Swati.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. Namaste, everyone. Good afternoon. I know it's very close to lunchtime or way past lunchtime for many of us, but I promise I will make it worth your wait. So please bear with me. Yeah. So when I started my journey as a certified and professional storyteller about 12 years ago, I realized that storytelling carries a quiet responsibility because stories, they inspire change. They have the power to inspire change. They have the power to build skills, values, to spark joy, and sometimes they simply remind us to look again at the world around us. And today, the story that I bring to all of you carries a purpose which is very close to my heart because it is a story from my home state, Goa. It's a place which many people believe they know. Wild parties, beaches, but that's not the real Goa, let me assure you. Goa is something much deeper. Goa is a land of rivers, of temples and churches, quiet villages and ancient traditions, and of people who have held on to their stories, stories that have survived centuries of change. Even when freedom from the Portuguese came 14 years later, after the rest of the country was freed from the British Empire. Now, since we are talking about rivers, let us quickly look at Goa through the lens of the natural world. So, Goa is an integral part of the ancient Western Ghats, the one of the most important biodiversity hotspots in the world. And Goa is the smallest state of India, but it is home to 11 rivers. And the story that I'm going to tell you today is about the Zuari River, which is Goa's longest river. And nestled in this river are two quiet bays, the Chikalim Bay and the Naushim Bay, where once lived a remarkable oyster, which would shape the windows of Goa's homes. So today's story is about light as much as it is about rivers and oysters. So let me take all of you centuries ago to the time when the Portuguese ruled over Goa. And during this time, there lived a voyager named Inacio de Valles. Now, Inacio was a trader. He was a traveler of the seas. And like many men of his time, he was always on the lookout for opportunities. So one year, he set out from Goa towards the Philippines. And he carried with him 14 crew members. There was a cook, there was a carpenter, there was a fisherman, there was a mechanic, and a few others. Now, they had traveled for quite some time when they decided to make a stop so that they could replenish their supplies. So they stopped at an island. And Inacio said to all the men, "Go around the island and get some food." So each of these men, they scattered around the island. And the cook, who had a very sharp nose, he started following a wonderful aroma, which led him to a small hut. And in that hut, he saw that there were several women cooking, and in each of their hands was a large flat shell with some bright orange flesh on it. Intrigued by what he saw, the cook took some of these shells back to the ship. Now, meanwhile, the carpenter had gone in another direction, and the carpenter was stopped in his tracks because he saw these beautiful windows that were glowing, not with glass, but with shells. He too was fascinated by what he saw. He picked up some of the shells and brought them back to the ship. Now, after some time, Inacio also came back to the ship. And he was furious because he just saw baskets filled with shells and shells and shells. And he roared at these men. He said, "Did I send you to collect shells? What are you, like little children collecting shells?" But the cook shared with him. He told him about the wonderful cooking. And the carpenter told him about these beautiful windows that were glowing. And all the other crew members also shared with Inacio about these shells that were being used to make ornaments and jewelry and craft. And as Inacio listened to all of them, he became silent because he remembered something. Just a few weeks ago, the Portuguese rulers had made an announcement that whoever could find a better and cheaper alternative to glass would be rewarded. You see, glass was expensive, it was difficult to transport, so they were looking for a better option. And here was the answer in front of Inacio's eyes. So, Inacio went back to Goa, presented the idea to the Portuguese rulers, and they were mighty impressed. And from the next day, the fisher folk who lived along the river banks were instructed to collect these oyster shells. Now, very soon, many homes in Goa, especially in the regions of Bardez and Salsette and Ilas, were featuring these beautiful homes which had these beautiful windows. And they were made with these window pane oysters. Now, these window panes were made by the Chari community, a traditional carpentry community who'd made these delicate window frames of teak wood and then fitted them with these shells. And these shells came from the oysters, which could be found in the brackish waters of the place where Goa's rivers meet the sea. Now, these shells were not transparent, they were translucent. So they just allowed enough light to enter the homes. They provided privacy, and in Goa's hot climate, they made the homes cooler. The most beautiful thing was that when the sunlight passed through them, it softened the light and it spilled the homes with a soft, pearly light. Scientists would call them the placuna placenta, but we in Goa call them the window pane oysters, or in our mother language Konkani, we call them kalvachi karpa. So, these window pane oysters decorated Goan's home for a long time. And these oyster shells grew along the river banks for many, many years. But as time passed by, the demand for these shells kept increasing, and more and more and more oysters were harvested. Meanwhile, the waters of the river Zuari were getting busier. The barges were frequently traveling across its channels, and the settlements along the banks were expanding. And after a while, the water, the river started carrying things that it was never meant to carry: waste, sewage, pollution. And quietly, the oysters disappeared. Today, the window pane oyster is rare. It is protected by law. The Wildlife Protection Act prohibits the harvesting of these oysters. And it makes me wonder, where did all the light go? Did the light disappear along with the oysters? Or is it still there somewhere in the rivers that flow through Goa's rivers? The narration that I shared today is an adaptation of a story that was shared by Goan researcher and photographer Elisha D'Souza, who first heard it as a young girl from her grand uncle or Shapai, Ambrose Cardozo. And that is perhaps where the real light lies, in stories. Because stories are like these old oyster windows. They do not show us everything, but they allow us to see the world softly. They remind us of what existed, and sometimes they help us notice what is quietly disappearing. So, today, through this story of rivers and oysters, I would like to invite all of us to open a small window in our hearts and in our minds, to be more gentle to the places that we visit, to listen to the rivers that sustain them, and to protect the light that still remains. Because even in the darkest of times, all we need is a small window to let that light return. Thank you. Or as we say in Kokni, Dev Bare Koru. God bless.
Thank you so much, Swati. I think it was very, very profound story. You being a sustainability practitioner and a nature educator, what better, we could have got from you. It was worth a wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And many of us resonated so much with your this shell. Even at my home, at my parents' place, I've been watching this shell for very long, ever since I grew up. I think it was some of my collections of my grandfather, who he was very fond of collecting shells, and so very apt that this reminds us how, though rivers are unity and in diversity, but how much it is needed that we care about them.